He heard her accent soft, southern measured, and he heard opportunity. To Harold Pena, the woman quietly correcting his schedule wasn't a professional. She was content. A viral moment wrapped in a drawl. When he repeated her words into his microphone, exaggerating every syllable, mocking the music of her voice for a crowd of millions, he thought he was reading the room. He thought influence meant volume. He was catastrophically wrong. Harold didn't know that the woman holding the clipboard wasn't just an event coordinator, and the calm, measured response she was about to deliver wouldn't just silence the conference hall. It would end his career. This is the story of what happens when performance meets precision. The Austin Convention Center's grand ballroom smelled of cold brew concentrate, new electronics, and algorithmic ambition. For Rebecca McWhorter, it mostly smelled of survival. Rebecca adjusted her headset, which had slipped for the third time that hour, leaving a dent just above her right temple. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday. The Creator Economy Conference was hitting its peak energy. A relentless wall of keynote hype, influencer meetups, and brand activations that generated more engagement per second than Rebecca earned in a month. Stage left needs a mic check. Green room wants kombucha, not LaCroix. Move, McWhorter. Move. The directive came from Chen, the event producer, who believed that hesitation was unprofessionalism. He was currently speed-walking toward her with his tablet raised like a weapon. "Fixing it, Davis," Rebecca said, her accent warm, unmistakable, betraying nothing of the exhaustion underneath. She grabbed her schedule tablet, ignoring the persistent ache in her lower back. She'd been on her feet for 6 hours. Her sensible flats, bought on clearance from a strip mall outlet, were holding together by sheer stubbornness. Rebecca McWhorter was 29 years old. To the creators and executives flooding Lauren's halls, she was infrastructure. She was the voice that confirmed room numbers, the hand that fixed technical glitches, the presence that absorbed their urgency without complaint. They didn't see the precision with which she moved. They certainly didn't know that 4 years ago, Rebecca had been a graduate student in rhetoric and communication at UT Austin, a national debate finalist, a researcher whose analysis of persuasive language patterns had been quietly purchased and repackaged by agencies. He heard her accent soft, southern measured, and he heard opportunity. To Harold Pena, the woman quietly correcting his schedule wasn't a professional. She was content. A viral moment wrapped in a drawl. When he repeated her words into his microphone, exaggerating every syllable, mocking the music of her voice for a crowd of millions, he thought he was reading the room. He thought influence meant volume. He was catastrophically wrong. Harold didn't know that the woman holding the clipboard wasn't just an event coordinator, and the calm, measured response she was about to deliver wouldn't just silence the conference hall. It would end his career. This is the story of what happens when performance meets precision. The Austin Convention Center's grand ballroom didn't whisper. It roared. Rebecca McWhorter stood just inside the service entrance, letting the wall of sound wash over her before stepping fully into the chaos. 2,000 people packed into a space designed for comfort at 1,500. The air tasted like cold brew, expensive cologne, and the particular static electricity that comes from too many phones streaming simultaneously. A bass-heavy track pulsed through speakers the size of refrigerators. On the main stage, a 20-foot LED screen cycled through sponsor logos, each one worth more than Rebecca's annual salary. The floor was polished concrete that threw back every sound, every footstep, every burst of performative laughter from clusters of people who'd just met but were already exchanging Instagram handles like wedding vows. Creator Summit Austin 2026, where influence meets innovation. Rebecca adjusted her headset and checked her tablet. 2:47 p.m. 17 minutes until the keynote. 13 minutes until Harold Pena would expect to be walking onto that stage. Except Harold Pena was currently in the wrong building. She discovered it 11 minutes ago during a routine cross-check with security. Harold's team had confirmed Ballroom A. The main schedule listed Ballroom C. His keynote slot was booked in C. His audience was gathering in C. His lighting cues, his intro video, his carefully calibrated microphone settings, all in C. Harold was holding court in A, surrounded by his entourage, live streaming to 4.3 million followers. Rebecca inhaled slowly through her nose, tasting truffle oil from the VIP lounge and the faint chemical bite of fresh carpet adhesive. Someone had spilled something sweet near the registration desk. The scent made her stomach turn. McWhorter. She turned. Chen materialized beside her, tablet glowing, Bluetooth earpiece blinking its angry little blue light. Davis was 34, effortlessly lean, and perpetually 3 seconds away from a panic attack he would never, ever show. "Paint a situation," he said, not quite making it a question. "Handling it." He goes on in 16 minutes. "I know. Ballroom C is at 87% capacity. Sponsors are seated. We've got cameras positioned. If he's late, he won't be late." Davis studied her for a half-second longer than necessary, the way people do when they're deciding whether to trust you or replace you. Then he nodded once and vanished back into the crowd, already barking instructions into his headset. Rebecca pulled up her venue map. Ballroom A to Ballroom C. 4-minute walk at a normal pace. 2 minutes if you cut through the service corridors. Add 60 seconds for Harold to disengage from whatever performance he was midway through. Add another 30 seconds for his team to actually listen to her. She could make this work. She had to make this work. Rebecca started moving, weaving through clusters of attendees who stood in the middle of traffic lanes filming themselves, blocking access to emergency exits while explaining their morning routines to audiences who would forget them by dinner. A woman in a neon blazer nearly collided with her, didn't apologize, didn't even look up from her phone. The noise shifted as Rebecca moved deeper into the space. Laughter here, sharp and performative. Negotiations there, quiet but urgent. Someone arguing about panel placement. Someone else crying in the alcove by the restrooms, their ring light still on, their face still camera-ready even as their voice cracked. Rebecca had been working events like this for 3 years. She knew the ecosystem, knew how influence calcified into hierarchy, knew that the people who screamed loudest about authenticity were usually the ones performing hardest. She reached the corridor that connected the ballrooms. The sound dampened slightly. Concrete walls, industrial lighting, the unglamorous infrastructure that kept the glamour running. Her left shoe was coming apart at the sole. She could feel it with every step, a slight separation, a little gap that let in cold air and threatened to catch on carpet edges. She'd reinforced it twice with superglue. It wouldn't hold much longer. Rebecca paused outside Ballroom A's service door, listening. Harold's voice carried through the gap, smooth, confident, engineered for virality. She couldn't make out the words, but she knew the cadence, knew the rhythm, knew the way he paused for effect, the way he dropped his voice to pull listeners closer, the way he built to a punchline that his audience would clip and share and caption with fire emojis. She knew because she'd helped build that cadence. 4 years ago, a freelance gig, a communications strategy memo analyzing persuasive speech patterns in digital media. She'd been paid $600 for 23 pages of research. The agency had stripped her name and sold it onward. She'd moved on. Grad school had been expensive, and her mother's medical bills had been mounting. She hadn't thought about it again until 6 months ago, when she'd been scrolling through her phone during a rare break and stumbled across a podcast clip. Harold Pena, explaining his method, using phrases she recognized, patterns she'd documented, her work laundered through intermediaries, repackaged as his genius. She'd laughed. Actually laughed. What else could she do? Rebecca pushed the door open. Ballroom A was smaller than C, but somehow louder. Harold stood center stage, not on the actual stage, but in the middle of the floor, surrounded by a semicircle of people holding phones like offerings. He was tall, polished, wearing the kind of deliberately casual outfit that cost more than Rebecca's monthly rent. White sneakers that had never touched dirt, tailored joggers, a black t-shirt with some minimalist logo she didn't recognize. His hair was perfect. His teeth were perfect. His smile was a weapon. And that's why authenticity isn't about being raw, it's about being real, Harold was saying, his voice carrying that particular pitch that made people lean in. Raw is cheap. Real is valuable. Raw is trauma dumping. Real is curated vulnerability. Heads nodded. Phones tilted. Someone whispered, "That's so good." Rebecca waited at the edge of the crowd. She didn't interrupt, didn't raise her voice, just stood there, clipboard against her chest, headset slightly crooked, waiting for a gap in his performance. Harold's eyes swept the room, feeding on attention, and landed on her. He didn't pause, didn't stumble, but something flickered across his face, brief, dismissive. The look you give someone who's supposed to be invisible but has somehow entered your line of sight. "Hold that thought," he said to his audience, raising one hand in a gesture that said, "Wait for me." Then he turned toward Rebecca, his smile cooling into something more professional, more distant. "Yes," he said. Not rude. Not yet. Just the tone of someone used to being interrupted only by people who served him. Rebecca kept her voice level. "Mr. Pena, I'm Rebecca McWhorter with Event Coordination. There's been a scheduling mix-up. Your keynote is in Ballroom C, not A. We need to move you now to make your start time." She watched him process it. Watched the irritation flash across his face before his media training smoothed it away. "My team confirmed Ballroom A," he said, still pleasant, still controlled. "I understand, sir." The confirmation was made before the final schedule adjustment. The keynote has always been listed for Ballroom C. Your audience is waiting there now. A woman in Harold's entourage, tall, angular, wearing a lanyard that said management, stepped forward. "We weren't informed of any change." "There wasn't a change, ma'am. The original booking was Ballroom C. I have the documentation if you'd like to." "So you're saying my team made a mistake?" Harold's voice shifted. Still smooth, but harder now, colder. Rebecca recognized the move. The pivot. The reframing. She'd written about it in that memo 4 years ago. When challenged, redirect to the challenger's credibility. Make the question about their competence, not your error. "I'm saying there was a miscommunication," Rebecca said carefully. "It happens, but we can fix it if we move now." Harold's smile spread slowly. Someone in his semicircle of followers was already filming. "You're right," he said, his voice suddenly warmer, friendlier. "Miscommunications happen, especially when you're working with." He paused just long enough. "Well-meaning staff." A few people laughed. Small laughs. Testing laughs. Harold's eyes dropped to Rebecca's name tag, then to her shoes. The moment lasted less than a second, but she felt it. The assessment. The cataloging. "I appreciate you coming all the way over here," Harold continued, his voice taking on a theatrical quality now, playing to his audience. "I really do. But maybe, and I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe if y'all had triple-checked the schedule instead of double-checked it, we wouldn't be in this situation." He drew out the y'all. Just slightly. Just enough. Someone in the crowd snickered. Rebecca's fingers tightened on her clipboard. Her accent wasn't something she hid, wasn't something she could hide, even if she wanted to. It was in her vowels, her rhythm, the way certain words shaped in her mouth. She'd spent years learning not to apologize for it, learning that the assumption of stupidity that came with it said more about the listener than the speaker. But standing there, watching Harold perform for phones that were all pointed at her now, she felt something old and familiar settle in her chest. "Here we go. Mr. Pena," she said, keeping her voice steady, "your keynote starts in 14 minutes. Ballroom C is a 4-minute walk. I can escort you there now, or you can arrive late. Your choice." Harold tilted his head, his smile never wavering. "You know what I love about events like this? The authenticity. The real conversations. He turned to his audience, including them in the moment. The passionate staff who really care about making sure everything runs smoothly. He turned back to Rebecca, even when they're a little overwhelmed. The laughter was louder this time. Rebecca met his eyes, held them. She'd been here before. Different rooms, different men, same script. The moment when someone decided that her voice meant she was less. The moment when someone decided that mocking her was easier than listening to her. She'd learned, over years, how to navigate these moments. How to stay small. How to let it pass. How to do her job and disappear. But standing there, with phones recording, with Harold's smile sharpening into something cruel, with the clock ticking down and her job on the line, and her shoes falling apart, and her mother's medical bills stacked on her kitchen counter, and 4 years of being invisible pressing down on her shoulders. Something shifted. He doesn't know who you are. He doesn't know what you know. He doesn't know that you built the blueprint he's using right now. Rebecca took one breath. Then another. Mr. Pena, she said quietly, her accent unchanged, her tone steady as stone. You have 13 minutes. Ballroom C. I'll be at the service door when you're ready to walk. She turned and walked away before he could respond. Behind her, she heard him laugh. Heard him say something else, his voice dripping with performance. Heard his audience reward him with the engagement he craved. Rebecca kept walking. The corridor swallowed the sound. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She'd done her job. She'd warned him. If he showed up late, that was on him. But she knew that this wasn't over. Men like Harold didn't like being dismissed. Especially not by women they'd already decided to mock. Rebecca pulled out her phone and sent a quick message to Davis. Pena informed. Gave him timeline. Standing by. Then she walked toward Ballroom C, where 2,000 people were waiting for a man who thought he was the smartest person in every room he entered. And Rebecca McWhorter, invisible, underestimated, exhausted, walked toward the moment that would change everything. She just didn't know it yet. Rebecca stood outside Ballroom C, watching the crowd through the narrow window in the service door. The seats were filling fast. Front row already packed with people who'd arrived an hour early just to be close to Harold Pena. Their phones were out, angled perfectly. Ring lights clipped to the backs of chairs. She checked her watch. 8 minutes until start time. The main doors burst open behind her, and Harold swept through, flanked by his team. He didn't look at Rebecca, didn't acknowledge her at all. Just strode past like she was furniture, his entourage flowing around her like water around a stone. But then he stopped. Turned. That smile again. Hey, he said, loud enough that his team paused, loud enough that a few nearby attendees looked over. Thanks for getting me here. Really? You were right, I was wrong. Takes a big person to admit that. Rebecca nodded once. You're on in 7 minutes, Mr. Pena. Break a leg. She moved to step aside, to let him pass, to return to being invisible. You know what? Harold said, pulling out his phone, opening his camera. I want to do something. Come here. Rebecca hesitated. No, really, Harold insisted, gesturing her closer. His team was watching now, amused. I want to thank you properly. What was your name again? Rebecca McWhorter. Rebecca, he repeated, and there it was again, that slight exaggeration. The way he let the syllables stretch. Rebecca McWhorter. And where are you from, Rebecca? Warning bells went off in her head. She'd been in this conversation before. Knew where it led. Texas, sir. Texas. Harold said it like a revelation, like he'd discovered something fascinating. He raised his phone higher, clearly recording now. Of course. I should have known. You've got that authentic Southern hospitality, don't you? That real, genuine. He paused, grinning at his camera. That real charm. A few people laughed. Nervous laughter, testing laughter. Rebecca kept her expression neutral. I appreciate that, Mr. Pena. You should head backstage now. Just one more thing, Harold said, and now his voice shifted, taking on that theatrical quality she'd heard earlier. I want to make sure I get this right. You said Ballroom C, right? Or was it? He drawled it out, mocking. Ballroom A. The laughter was louder now. You know what I love about real people? Harold continued, speaking to his camera but performing for the growing crowd around them. They don't hide who they are. They don't put on airs. They just... He imitated her accent again, exaggerating every vowel. They just tell you like it is, y'all. Something cold settled in Rebecca's chest. Not anger yet. Recognition. She'd seen this before. Had studied it actually. The way mockery disguises itself as affection. The way people convince themselves that cruelty is just honesty. The way audiences laugh because it's easier than intervening, because being in on the joke feels safer than being the joke. Mr. Pena, she said quietly, you have 5 minutes. Oh, I know, Harold said, waving his hand dismissively. Don't worry, Rebecca. Can I call you Becca?
No? Okay, Rebecca it is.
Don't worry, Rebecca. I won't mess up your schedule again. I know how important it is that everything runs real smooth-like. More laughter. Someone in his entourage was filming too now. This was content. This was engagement. This was what Harold did. Found moments, manufactured virality, turned interactions into performances. Rebecca stood very still. She'd learned over the years that stillness was a kind of armor. That if you didn't react, people often lost interest. That invisibility was sometimes the safest option. But Harold wasn't losing interest. If anything, he was gaining momentum. You know what, everyone? Harold said, turning fully to the crowd now, his phone still recording. This is what I'm talking about. This is real America. Real people, working real jobs, doing real work. And we should appreciate that.
We should celebrate that.
Right? He started clapping. A few people joined in, uncertain. Come on, Harold encouraged. Let's hear it for Rebecca and all the hard-working staff who make events like this possible. The applause spread. It should have felt like recognition. Should have felt like respect. But Rebecca heard what was underneath it. The condescension. The performance of appreciation that was really just another form of dismissal. Harold's eyes met hers. There was something there, a challenge, a test. He was seeing how far he could push. Seeing if she'd break. Seeing if she'd give him the reaction he wanted. The drama that would make the clip even more shareable. She didn't give him anything. For minutes, Mr. Pena, she said, her voice steady, her accent unchanged. Harold's smile widened. You are just the sweetest thing, aren't you? He finally walked away, his team flowing with him, his phone still recording, his audience still laughing. Rebecca stood there, alone in the corridor, listening to the sound of her own heartbeat. Her hands weren't shaking. Her breathing was steady. But something inside her was calibrating, calculating. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She was assessing. Harold Pena had just made a very specific choice. He'd looked at her accent, her role, her visibility, and decided she was safe to mock. Decided she was small enough to use. Decided she wouldn't fight back because people like her never fought back. Rebecca pulled out her phone and opened a voice memo. Her finger hovered over the record button. Then she deleted the app entirely. She didn't need to record this. 15 other people already were. Harold Pena thought he knew who she was. Thought he understood what he was dealing with. Thought he could read a room, read a person, read a situation. But as Rebecca walked back toward the ballroom's main entrance, as she heard the crowd inside start to cheer for Harold's introduction, as she felt the familiar weight of being underestimated settle over her shoulders, she realized something that Harold hadn't. This wasn't a mistake. This was a test. And Rebecca McWhorter had spent her entire life learning how to pass tests that weren't designed for her to win. Rebecca found a quiet corner near the emergency exit, away from the cameras and the crowd. Inside the ballroom, Harold's voice boomed through the speakers, smooth and confident, delivering the keynote he'd practiced 1,000 times. She closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. Let herself really listen. The cadence, the pauses, the way he emphasized certain words and let others fade. The rhythm of his speech pattern, rising, falling, pulling the audience in, giving them space to react, then pulling them back. She knew this pattern. She'd written about this pattern. For years ago, Rebecca had been someone else entirely. Not invisible, not exhausted, not standing in corridors while other people took the spotlight. For years ago, she'd been 3 months away from defending her dissertation at UT Austin. Her focus was rhetoric and communication strategy, specifically how digital media had changed persuasive speech patterns. Her advisor had called her work groundbreaking. She'd had job offers from 3 universities. She'd been building something. Then the phone call came. Her mother's voice, weak and confused, trying to explain why she couldn't remember how to get home from the grocery store. The diagnosis came 2 weeks later. Early onset dementia. Aggressive progression. Someone needed to be there. Rebecca was an only child. Her father had died when she was 12. There was no one else. So she'd withdrawn from the program, packed up her apartment in Austin, moved back to her childhood home in a small town outside Houston, became a caregiver, a bill payer, a person who made decisions about medications and insurance claims and whether they could afford the good nursing care or just the adequate kind. The university said she could return when things stabilized. But dementia doesn't stabilize. It just progresses, slowly eroding the person you love until you're caring for someone who looks like your mother but doesn't remember your name. Rebecca had needed money, needed flexibility, needed work that didn't require her to be present in an office from 9 to 5. So, she'd started taking freelance gigs, communications consulting, speech analysis, strategy memos for agencies that needed academic credibility but didn't want to pay academic rates. One of those gigs had been a 23-page analysis of persuasive techniques in podcasting and digital influence. She'd documented everything. The optimal pause length for audience engagement, the cadence patterns that created trust, the way certain vocal inflections made speakers sound both authoritative and relatable. She'd been paid $600. She'd needed it for her mother's prescriptions. She'd signed the release form, never asked what they'd do with it, never imagined that 2 years later, she'd watch a keynote speech by a man she'd never met and hear her own research patterns reflected back at her. Harold's voice cut through her memory. Inside the ballroom, he was building to some kind of climactic point. The audience was silent, waiting, hooked. Rebecca opened her eyes. She remembered her debate coach in high school, Coach Peters, a small woman with a big voice who'd pulled Rebecca aside after her first practice and said, "You've got something rare. You think 3 moves ahead. You see the whole board while everyone else is just moving pieces." Rebecca had won regionals, then state, then nationals. Not because she was the loudest, not because she had the best insults or the sharpest comebacks, because she understood how arguments worked, understood structure, understood that winning wasn't about dominating, it was about dismantling. Finding the weak point in someone's logic and applying pressure until the whole thing collapsed. She hadn't used those skills in years, had learned, instead, to be small, to be accommodating, to absorb other people's frustration and move on. But standing there, listening to Harold Pena use her own research to build his empire while mocking the woman who'd created it, Rebecca felt something shift. She knew exactly how he thought. Knew his patterns because she'd documented them. Knew his techniques because she'd analyzed them. Knew his vulnerabilities because she'd spent 4 years studying how powerful people maintain their power and how that power could be challenged. Harold thought he was reading the room, thought he was in control, but he was using a playbook Rebecca had written, and she knew every single weakness in it. Inside the ballroom, applause erupted. Harold had landed his big moment. People were standing. Phones were raised. The keynote was a success. Rebecca pushed off the wall and started walking. not away from the ballroom. Toward it. She wasn't angry anymore. Anger was reactive. Anger was what Harold expected from people he mocked. Anger made you look unstable, emotional, exactly what people assumed about women who'd been humiliated in public. Rebecca wasn't angry. She was precise. She reached the main entrance to ballroom C just as Harold was wrapping up. The doors were propped open for ventilation. She could see the stage, see Harold basking in the applause, see his phone in his hand ready to capture the moment. Davis appeared beside her, his face flushed with relief. Thank God. He made it on time.
No disaster.
We're good. Rebecca nodded slowly. We're good. You okay? I heard he was. Davis hesitated. Being Harold.
Ai fine.
Because if he was inappropriate, we can file a complaint with his management. Rebecca almost laughed. File a complaint. Put her name on a document that would go nowhere, accomplish nothing, mark her as difficult to work with. She'd seen how those complaints ended. Always the same way. With the woman finding a new job. I'm fine, she repeated. Really? Davis studied her for a moment, then nodded and disappeared back into the chaos. Rebecca stayed at the entrance, watching. Harold was taking questions now. A microphone was being passed through the audience. Someone asked about his morning routine. Someone else asked about his creative process. Someone asked how he stayed authentic while building a brand. Harold answered everything with perfect confidence, with the exact techniques Rebecca had outlined in that memo. The strategic vulnerability, the calculated spontaneity, the performance of authenticity that was, itself, the least authentic thing in the room. And as she watched, Rebecca made a decision. She wasn't going to file a complaint, wasn't going to report him, wasn't going to disappear quietly and let this moment define her. She was going to do something far more devastating. She was going to show him exactly who he'd mocked. She was going to dismantle him using the same techniques he'd used to build himself. And she was going to do it so carefully, so precisely, that by the time he realized what was happening, it would already be too late. Rebecca turned and walked back toward the service corridor, her mind already 3 moves ahead, seeing the whole board while everyone else was still watching the performance. Harold Pena had no idea what was coming, but Rebecca McWhorter knew exactly what to do. The Q&A session was winding down when Rebecca walked back into Ballroom C. She didn't enter through the main doors. She came through the side entrance, the one reserved for staff, the one that put her directly in Harold's line of sight. He was answering a question about content strategy, his voice confident, his gestures practiced. But his eyes found her immediately. For just a second, his rhythm faltered. Then he recovered, smoothly redirecting his attention back to the audience. Rebecca didn't sit, didn't hide in the back. She stood where he could see her, clipboard at her side, waiting. The moderator announced one final question. A young woman in the 3rd row stood up, microphone shaking slightly in her hands. Mr. Pena, what advice would you give to people who feel like they're not being taken seriously because of how they sound or where they're from? The irony was so sharp it could cut. Harold smiled. That's a great question. And you know what? I think authenticity is the answer. Don't change who you are. Don't hide your voice. Own it. Because the right people will respect you for being real. Applause rippled through the crowd. People nodded. A few wiped their eyes. Rebecca waited until the applause died down. Then she raised her hand. The moderator saw her first. We've actually concluded the Q&A, but I have a clarification, Rebecca said, her voice carrying clearly through the space. Not loud, not aggressive, just present. About Mr. Pena's last answer. Harold's smile tightened. I think we've covered everything, but it'll just take a moment, Rebecca said, already moving toward the microphone the previous questioner had just returned to the moderator. The moderator, uncertain, handed it to her. The room shifted. Phones that had been lowering came back up. This wasn't part of the program. Harold recovered quickly, leaning into his casual confidence. Sure, absolutely. The floor is yours. Rebecca stood in the aisle, microphone in hand, her accent unchanged, her demeanor calm. You just said that authenticity means not hiding your voice, that the right people will respect you for being real. That's right, Harold said, nodding encouragingly. But about 40 minutes ago, you mocked my voice in front of approximately 30 people in the corridor. You recorded it. You imitated my accent. You used my speech pattern as a punchline. The room went completely silent. Harold's smile wavered but held. I think there's been a misunderstanding. You were just demonstrating a cognitive bias called accent-based prejudice, Rebecca continued, her tone still even, still educational. It's a well-documented phenomenon. When people hear certain regional accents, particularly Southern accents in professional settings, they unconsciously associate those accents with lower intelligence or confidence. Even when the speaker has identical credentials to someone with a quote-unquote neutral accent. Someone in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Phones were definitely recording now. Harold tried to laugh. I think you're reading too much into. You used what linguists call mock vernacular, Rebecca said, not cutting him off exactly, but filling the space he'd expected to occupy. That's when someone exaggerates dialectical features for humor. It's often defended as harmless. But the research shows it reinforces stereotypes and signals to an audience who's safe to dismiss. The laughter Harold had been hoping for didn't come. Instead, people were listening. Actually listening. And here's what's interesting, Rebecca continued, taking a small step forward. You also used what's called strategic condescension. That's when someone praises a person, like you did when you applauded the hardworking staff, but the praise itself is diminishing. It positions the praiser as superior and the praised person as pitiable. Harold's face had gone from performatively confused to genuinely uncertain. Look, if I offended you. I'm not offended, Mr. Pena, Rebecca said quietly.
I'm clarifying.
Because you just told that young woman to own her voice and that the right people would respect her. But what you really demonstrated is that powerful people often respect voices only when they sound like power. And when they don't, those voices get turned into content. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the air conditioning. You could hear someone's phone buzz and get immediately silenced. Harold tried one more time to regain control. His voice took on that warm, reasonable quality. I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I think this is actually a really important conversation about how we communicate with each other, and... You're doing it again, Rebecca said. Not rudely. Almost gently. You're using what's called diplomatic dismissal. Acknowledging the concern while redirecting away from accountability. It's technique number 47 in the persuasive speech pattern analysis I wrote 4 years ago. Harold blinked. Excuse me? The strategy memo, Rebecca said. 23 pages. Analysis of persuasive techniques in digital influence. Optimal pause lengths. Cadence patterns. Vocal inflections that create trust while maintaining authority. You used 17 of those techniques in your keynote today. The room had gone from silent to stunned. I don't know what you're talking about, Harold said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Austin Communications Group, Rebecca said. They purchased the memo from me in 2022.
$600.
They repackaged it as part of a larger consulting package. Your management team bought it 3 months later. I didn't know that at the time, but I recognized the patterns when I watched your first major podcast. Someone in the audience gasped. Actually gasped. You're saying I stole your work? Harold's voice was rising now, defensive. No, Rebecca said calmly. Your team purchased research that was legally sold. That's not theft. That's business. But it is ironic that you built a brand on communication techniques you didn't develop, while mocking the communication style of the person who developed them. Harold opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time since Rebecca had met him, Harold Pena had nothing to say. The audience was completely still. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something else. Something uncomfortable and riveting, and impossible to look away from. Rebecca held the microphone for one more moment. Then she set it carefully on the nearest seat and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she heard nothing.
No applause. No gasps.
Just silence. The kind of silence that happens when people realize they've witnessed something they can't unsee. Rebecca pushed through the doors and into the corridor. Her heart was hammering. Her hands were finally shaking. But she'd done it. She'd spoken. And for the first time in years, someone had actually listened. She made it 3 steps before she heard footsteps behind her. Quick, urgent footsteps. Miss McWhorter. Rebecca turned. A woman stood there. Late 50s, silver hair, elegant in a way that didn't need to announce itself. She wore a conference badge, but the lanyard was different from the others. Platinum level. Speaker access. Dr. Elaine Morrison, the woman said, extending her hand. We need to talk. Rebecca shook Dr. Morrison's hand automatically, her mind still processing what had just happened inside the ballroom. I'm sorry, I don't. You don't know who I am, Dr. Morrison said with a slight smile. That's fine. But I know exactly who you are, Rebecca. I've known since I saw your name on the staff manifest 3 months ago. Before Rebecca could respond, the ballroom doors burst open behind them. Harold emerged, his face flushed, his team scrambling to keep up. He spotted Rebecca immediately. You, he said, pointing at her, his voice loud enough to echo off the concrete walls. You just sabotaged my keynote. Rebecca turned to face him, her exhaustion suddenly feeling very heavy. Mr. Pena, I simply responded to your question about. You ambushed me. Harold cut her off. His phone was in his hand, but for once, he wasn't recording. His carefully curated image had cracked, and what was underneath was just a man who wasn't used to being challenged. You waited until I was in front of 2,000 people, and you tried to make me look like... Like what? Rebecca asked quietly. Like someone who mocks people for how they sound? Because that's not something I made you look like. That's something you chose to be. Harold's entourage shifted uncomfortably. A few of them were still filming, but their angles had changed. They weren't capturing Harold's triumph anymore. They were documenting his unraveling. This is workplace harassment, Harold said, his voice taking on a threatening edge. You're event staff. You don't have the authority to question speakers. You deliberately disrupted a scheduled program. I want to speak to whoever's in charge of this conference. That would be me, Dr. Morrison said, stepping forward slightly. Harold's attention snapped to her. His expression shifted through several emotions: confusion, calculation, then recognition. Dr. Morrison. I didn't realize you were, he adjusted his tone, smoothing it out, finding his professional voice again. I didn't realize you were here. This staff member just... I heard what Ms. McWhorter said. Dr. Morrison interrupted gently. I was in the back of the ballroom. I heard all of it. Then you know she made false accusations about my work, Harold said, seizing the opportunity. She claimed I stole research from her, which is categorically untrue. My team has never... She didn't say you stole anything, Dr. Morrison corrected. She said your team purchased research that was legally sold and later repackaged. Those are very different statements. One is accusation. The other is documentation. Harold's jaw tightened. Regardless, she had no right to disrupt my presentation with personal grievances. She's clearly unprofessional and possibly unstable. I mean, who does that? Who waits until someone is on stage and then tries to? Harold, Dr. Morrison said, and something in her tone made him stop mid-sentence. You're spiraling, and you're making this worse. I'm making this worse? Harold's voice rose. She's the one who... You mocked her accent in a public space, Dr. Morrison said, her voice still calm but carrying weight. Multiple people recorded it. You then used her speech pattern for entertainment. You positioned yourself as superior to someone who was simply doing her job. All of that happened before she said a single word in that ballroom. Harold looked around at his team, as if expecting backup. But they were all staring at their phones now, their faces illuminated by screens, their expressions shifting as they apparently saw something that changed their calculations. "What?" Harold demanded. "What are you all looking at?" One of his assistants, a young man with expensive headphones around his neck, turned his phone toward Harold. "The clips are already circulating. From the corridor. And from the ballroom." Harold grabbed the phone. Rebecca watched his face as he scrolled, watched the color drain, watched his eyes widen. "This is out of context," Harold said, but his voice had lost its conviction. "People don't have the full story. They don't understand what." "They understand perfectly," Dr. Morrison said. "They watched you mock someone. Then they watched that same person calmly explain why what you did was harmful. Then they watched you respond by calling her unprofessional and unstable. You're following a very predictable pattern, Harold. And the internet has seen this pattern before." Harold thrust the phone back at his assistant. "I want a statement released immediately, clarifying my position, explaining that I was taken out of context, and that I have nothing but respect for the hardworking staff," Rebecca said softly. Harold's eyes snapped to her. For a moment, she thought he might actually lunge at her. But Dr. Morrison stepped between them, subtle but definitive. "Mr. Pena," Dr. Morrison said, "I think you should go back to your hotel. Let your team manage the immediate response. And perhaps consider that sometimes the best statement is silence." "I'm not staying silent while someone destroys my reputation," Harold said. "Your reputation," Dr. Morrison said, "is not being destroyed by Rebecca McWhorter. It's being revealed. There's a difference." The words hung in the air. Harold stared at Dr. Morrison, then at Rebecca, then back at his team. Something in his expression shifted. Not acceptance. Not understanding. Just the slow, dawning realization that he'd lost control of the narrative. "This isn't over," Harold said, but it sounded hollow. "My lawyers will be in touch with the conference organizers. This woman should not be allowed anywhere near events like this." He turned and walked away, his entourage following, their heads bent over their phones, their fingers flying across screens, already crafting damage control that Rebecca suspected would only make things worse. Rebecca stood in the empty corridor, suddenly aware of how quiet it had become. How much her legs hurt. How little she'd eaten today. How surreal this entire situation was. Dr. Morrison was watching her carefully. "Are you all right?" "I don't know," Rebecca said honestly. I don't know what I just did." "You spoke truth to power," Dr. Morrison said. "In my experience, that rarely feels triumphant in the moment. It mostly just feels terrifying." Rebecca almost laughed. "Almost? Is that what this is? Because I feel like I just set my entire life on fire." "Maybe," Dr. Morrison said. "Or maybe you just cleared space for something better to grow." Before Rebecca could ask what that meant, Dr. Morrison continued. "I meant what I said earlier. I know who you are, Rebecca. I've known for a while. I don't understand the communications framework this entire conference is built on." Dr. Morrison said, "The research that informed our speaker selection, our session structure, our approach to digital engagement, a significant portion of that came from a series of papers written by a graduate student at UT Austin. Papers that were brilliant, innovative, and then mysteriously abandoned when the student withdrew from the program." Rebecca's breath caught. "You read my research? Read it." Dr. Morrison smiled. "Rebecca, I've been trying to find you for 2 years." Rebecca couldn't breathe properly. The corridor was spinning slightly, or maybe that was just her. "You've been trying to find me? Your university wouldn't give me your contact information," Dr. Morrison said. "Privacy policies. All they confirm was that you'd withdrawn from the program. I hired someone to track you down, but by then you'd moved, changed your phone number. You disappeared very thoroughly." "I was taking care of my mother," Rebecca said, her voice distant. I wasn't trying to disappear. I was just trying to survive. I know, Dr. Morrison said gently. I found that out eventually. But by then, you were here, using your maiden name on the staff manifest, and I thought, she paused. I thought perhaps you'd found your way back to the field in your own time. So I waited. Waited for what? For you to remember who you are. The words hit Rebecca like cold water. She opened her mouth to respond, but Dr. Morrison was already moving, gesturing back toward the ballroom. Come with me. There's something you need to see. Rebecca followed, numb, exhausted, confused. They walked back through the side entrance. The ballroom was in chaos. People clustered in groups, phones out, voices urgent. The energy had completely shifted from the polished conference atmosphere to something raw and real. Dr. Morrison led Rebecca to the front of the room, where a small group had gathered near the stage. Rebecca recognized a few faces: conference organizers, keynote speakers, tech executives. Everyone, Dr. Morrison said, not loudly, but with enough authority that the conversation stopped. This is Rebecca McWhorter. The group turned. Their expressions ranged from curious to confused to, in a few cases, recognizing. Rebecca, Dr. Morrison continued, did graduate work at UT Austin in rhetoric and communication strategy. Her research on persuasive speech patterns in digital media was some of the most innovative work in the field in the last decade. Her analysis of how accent and dialect affect credibility perception fundamentally changed how we approach inclusive communication design. Rebecca stood frozen as Dr. Morrison pulled up something on her tablet and projected it onto the screen behind her. It was the title page of a research paper. Rebecca's research paper. One she'd written in her second year of graduate school. This paper, Dr. Morrison said, has been cited in 43 peer-reviewed journals. It's been used as the basis for training programs at Fortune 500 companies. It influenced the communication framework that this conference is built on. The room was silent. The author, Dr. Morrison continued, is Rebecca Ann McWhorter, the same woman who Harold Pena mocked approximately 1 hour ago for her southern accent. Someone in the group whistled low. Someone else muttered something that sounded like a curse. But that's not all, Dr. Morrison said, pulling up another document. In 2022, Rebecca wrote a freelance analysis titled Persuasive Techniques in Digital Influence, a Pattern Study. 23 pages documenting specific communication strategies used by successful digital creators. That memo was purchased by Austin Communications Group and later formed the foundation of a consulting package sold to multiple influencer management companies. She pulled up another screen. This one showed an invoice. Rebecca's name.
$600. The date.
One of those management companies, Dr. Morrison said, represents Harold Pena. The gasps were audible this time. So when Harold stood in that corridor and mocked Rebecca's voice, when he reduced her to a punchline, when he positioned himself as intellectually superior, he was using communication techniques that Rebecca herself had documented. He was performing authority using a playbook she had written. A woman in the group, Rebecca recognized her as one of the conference's main sponsors, spoke up. Does Pena know this? He does now, Dr. Morrison said. Rebecca informed him publicly in the Q&A session, which is why he's currently attempting to frame her as unprofessional and vengeful, rather than acknowledging what actually happened. Which is what, someone asked. Which is that Harold Pena mocked a woman who is significantly more qualified than he is, Dr. Morrison said simply. He mistook visible markers, her role, her accent, her position for actual competence. And when she corrected that mistake, he tried to destroy her credibility rather than examine his own bias. The silence that followed was heavy. Rebecca found her voice finally. Dr. Morrison, why are you doing this? Dr. Morrison turned to her. Because I've spent 30 years watching brilliant people, particularly women, particularly people from marginalized communities, have their expertise dismissed because they don't sound like what people expect expertise to sound like. And I'm tired of it. She turned back to the group. Rebecca McWhorter should not be coordinating events. She should be designing them. She should be on that stage, not managing it from the sidelines. And the fact that she's been invisible to all of us while simultaneously shaping the very frameworks we use, that's not an accident. That's a systemic failure. One of the conference organizers stepped forward. Dr. Morrison, if what you're saying is true, and I'm not doubting you, but if it's true, why didn't Ms. McWhorter ever apply for a speaking position? Why work as event staff? Rebecca opened her mouth, but Dr. Morrison spoke first. Because when you're caring for a sick parent, when you're drowning in medical debt, when you're just trying to keep your head above water, you take the jobs that are available. You take the work that pays immediately, and you learn to be grateful for it, even when you know you're capable of more. She looked at Rebecca. Isn't that right? Rebecca nodded slowly. She couldn't speak. If she spoke, she would cry, and she'd spent 3 years learning not to cry in public. Dr. Morrison turned back to the screen, pulling up one final document. I'm offering Rebecca a position, a full fellowship at the Morrison Institute for Communication Research. It includes a living stipend, health insurance, research funding, and the opportunity to complete her doctoral work while contributing to our ongoing projects. Rebecca's legs went weak. What? You heard me, Dr. Morrison said. I wanted to wait. Wanted to let you choose to come back to the field on your own terms. But after what happened today, I realized that waiting was just another form of letting you disappear. So I'm making the offer now, publicly, in front of witnesses. She met Rebecca's eyes. You don't have to accept. You can walk away. You can go back to being invisible if that's what you choose. But I want you to know that invisibility is a choice you're making, not a condition that's been imposed on you. Rebecca stood there, surrounded by people she didn't know, being offered a future she'd stopped believing was possible, and for the first time in 3 years, she had absolutely no idea what to say. Behind them, the ballroom doors opened. Someone rushed in, phone in hand, face flushed with urgency. Dr. Morrison, the person said, you need to see this. The Harold Pena situation. It's everywhere.
Twitter, TikTok,
Instagram. The clips are going viral, and people are finding everything. Dr. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Everything. Old interviews where he's dismissive of women. Podcast episodes where he talks over female guests. Content he's plagiarized. Business partners he's pushed out. Everything. It's all coming out at once. The room erupted in urgent conversation. Phones came out. People started making calls. But Rebecca just stood there, watching the chaos unfold, realizing that she hadn't just spoken up in that ballroom. She'd started something she couldn't stop. And Harold Pena's carefully constructed empire was collapsing in real time. Rebecca watched it happen from a quiet corner of the conference center's break room. Someone had given her a bottle of water. Someone else had brought her a sandwich she couldn't eat. Davis had appeared briefly, looking shell-shocked, to tell her she should go home, rest, take all the time she needed. She didn't go home. She couldn't. She was trapped in the eye of a hurricane she'd accidentally created, and leaving felt impossible. On her phone, the storm raged. The first clip to go viral was from the corridor. Harold mocking her accent, the crowd laughing, Rebecca standing there absorbing it. It had been posted by someone in his entourage, originally framed as Harold being hilarious with staff.
But the framing had changed.
The comments now were brutal. This is why I stopped following him. The way he looks at her makes me sick. This is what privilege sounds like. Someone find out who she is. She deserves better. Someone had found out who she was. Within 2 hours, a thread appeared on Twitter documenting Rebecca's academic history, her published research, the papers she'd written that had been cited hundreds of times. Someone had even found her graduate school photo, younger, less tired, smiling in front of a UT Austin banner. The contrast between that photo and the video of her standing silently while Harold mocked her had apparently struck a nerve. The second clip, Rebecca's response in the ballroom, was spreading even faster. But it wasn't being shared as drama or entertainment. It was being shared as education. This is how you handle a bully. She didn't raise her voice once, and she destroyed him. The way she explained accent bias while demonstrating grace under pressure is incredible. This woman is a whole PhD, and he thought she was just sweet. Rebecca scrolled through the comments, her emotions cycling between horror and disbelief, and something else she couldn't quite name. Vindication, maybe. Or exhaustion. Or both. Someone had created a TikTok breakdown of Harold's communication techniques, comparing them frame by frame to excerpts from Rebecca's published research. The video had 2 million views in 3 hours. He literally used her playbook to mock her. The irony is unreal. Another account had found old podcast episodes where Harold had talked over female guests, dismissed their expertise, made subtle digs about their qualifications. The clips were being assembled into compilations with increasingly pointed titles. Harold Pena, a pattern of disrespect. When confidence becomes condescension. How Harold built an empire on other people's work. That last one included receipts, screenshots of consulting invoices, testimony from former collaborators who'd been pushed out of projects, analysis of his early content compared to later content showing distinct shifts in style and substance. The internet was doing what the internet did best, weaponized research. And Harold was losing. His management had released a statement an hour ago. Rebecca had read it twice, analyzing the language with the same precision she'd once applied to academic papers. Harold Pena deeply regrets any misunderstanding that occurred during today's event. He has the utmost respect for all conference staff and never intended to cause offense. He looks forward to continuing meaningful conversations about communication and authenticity in the digital space. The statement had 40,000 quote tweets. None of them were supportive. Regrets the misunderstanding, not his actual behavior. Never intended to cause offense is not the same as I was wrong. This apology was definitely written by a PR team at 3 a.m. Harold had gone silent on his own accounts.
No live streams.
No stories.
No witty observations.
The silence was deafening for someone who usually posted 30 times a day. But other people were talking. A woman Rebecca didn't recognize posted a video. I worked with Harold's team in 2023. He made comments about my accent too. I'm from Boston. He called me unnecessarily aggressive in meetings while praising male colleagues for being assertive. I thought I was imagining it. Another voice, Harold's podcast editor here. I quit 3 months ago because he kept taking credit for research I'd done. He'd present my work as his insights and then pay me minimum wage. NDA is expired now, so here's my receipts. The pattern was undeniable. Rebecca wasn't an isolated incident. She was the catalyst that made everyone else feel safe enough to speak. Rebecca's phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. McWhorter, this is Jennifer Kaplan from the New York Times. I'm writing a piece about what happened today and the larger conversation about credibility, expertise, and bias in professional spaces. Would you be willing to speak with me? Before Rebecca could respond, another text came through. Then another.
Fan.
The Washington Post. Morning shows.
Podcasts.
Everyone wanted to talk to her. The conversation lasted 3 more minutes. Her mother asked about classes Rebecca wasn't taking anymore. Mentioned neighbors who'd moved away years ago. Talked about plans for Christmas that would never happen. But Rebecca listened to every word like it was precious.
Because it was.
When the call ended, Rebecca sat in silence for a long moment. Then she opened her messages and scrolled to Dr. Morrison's contact. She typed, yes. And then, because it needed to be said, thank you for seeing me. Dr. Morrison's response came seconds later. Rebecca, I always saw you. The world just finally caught up. The fellowship paperwork arrived 3 days later. Rebecca sat at her mother's kitchen table, The same table where she'd done her homework in high school, where she'd written her college application essays, where she drafted her graduate school thesis proposal before everything changed, and read through the contract slowly. Full stipend. Enough to cover her mother's care facility with money left over. Health insurance, dental, vision, research funding, office space. The opportunity to complete her doctoral work while contributing to active projects at the Morrison Institute. It was everything she'd stopped letting herself dream about. The house was quiet. Her mother was at the care facility now. Rebecca had moved her there 6 months ago when staying home alone had become dangerous. The guilt had been crushing at first. But the nurses were kind, the facility was clean, and her mother seemed happier there. More engaged, less afraid. Rebecca's phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Morrison. No pressure. But I'm having coffee tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at Halcyon downtown if you want to discuss details. Or just chat. Or sit in silence. Whatever works. Rebecca smiled. She'd spent the last 3 days mostly avoiding her phone, letting the storm pass while she figured out what she actually wanted. The clips were still circulating, but the energy had shifted. The internet had moved from outrage to analysis to, surprisingly, celebration. Rebecca had become a symbol of something larger than herself. Competence over confidence. Substance over performance. Quiet dignity over loud dominance. She didn't love being a symbol. Symbols weren't people. They were projections. But she understood it. Understood why people needed to believe that speaking up mattered. That expertise would eventually be recognized. That the quiet people weren't weak. They were just waiting for the right moment. Harold Pena had disappeared from social media entirely. His management had released a second statement announcing he was taking time to reflect and learn. His podcast had been put on indefinite hiatus. 2 of his major sponsors had pulled out. A documentary project he'd been developing had been canceled. Rebecca felt no joy about it.
No triumph.
Just a kind of exhausted sadness that it had taken public humiliation for consequences to finally arrive. Someone had sent her a message through LinkedIn. I'm a producer at Harold's former podcast network. We're looking for someone to take over his slot. Would you be interested in hosting a show about communication, language, and credibility in the digital age? We're offering a competitive rate and full creative control. Rebecca had stared at the message for 10 minutes before archiving it without responding. She didn't want Harold's slot. Didn't want to build herself on top of his ruins. Didn't want to be known as the woman who destroyed Harold Pena. She wanted to be known as Rebecca McWhorter, researcher, scholar, the person who understood how language shapes power and how power shapes perception. That had been enough 4 years ago. It was enough now.
Her phone rang. Not a text this time.
An actual call. She checked the number and answered. Rebecca, the caregiver said, warmth in her voice. Your mom had another good day. She asked about you again. Wanted to know when you're visiting. I'll be there tomorrow, Rebecca said. After my meeting downtown. She'll love that. And Rebecca? Janet paused. I saw what happened. The video. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. Rebecca's throat tightened. Thank you. Your mom would be proud too. Is proud, I mean. Even if she can't always remember why. After the call ended, Rebecca sat at the table for a long time, watching the afternoon light shift across the room. This kitchen held so many versions of her. The child who'd learned to cook for herself when her mom worked double shifts. The teenager who'd studied late into the night, determined to escape small-town expectations. The graduate student who'd come home for Christmas break and never left. And now, maybe, the person who was finally ready to try again. Rebecca pulled out her laptop and opened a new document. Started typing. Not a statement. Not a response. Just thoughts. Observations. The beginning of a new research paper about accent bias and credibility perception in professional spaces. About how invisibility works. About what it costs and what it protects. She wrote for 2 hours straight, The words flowing the way they used to before exhaustion and grief had made everything feel impossible. When she finally stopped, she had 12 pages of rough ideas. Not polished, not ready to share, but real, substantial, her own. She saved the document and closed her laptop. Then she pulled out her phone and texted Dr. Morrison, "I'll be there at 9 a.m. and I'm accepting the fellowship." The response came immediately. "Welcome back, Dr. McWhorter." Rebecca stared at the title. Dr. McWhorter. She wasn't a doctor yet, hadn't defended her dissertation,
Hadn't finished.
but Dr. Morrison had called her that anyway. A promise, a recognition, a belief that Rebecca would get there. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, just anticipation. She got up at 2 a.m. and walked through the quiet house, touching familiar objects. Her mother's reading chair, the bookshelf full of paperbacks and cookbooks, the photos on the wall showing a life that had been full and complicated and harder than anyone from the outside could have understood. Rebecca stopped at a photo from her graduate school orientation. She was smiling, confident, wearing UT Austin shirt, standing with a group of other new students who all looked impossibly young. That version of Rebecca had believed she could change the world. This version knew better, knew that changing the world was incremental, exhausting, often thankless work, knew that expertise didn't guarantee recognition and speaking up didn't guarantee justice. But she also knew something that younger version hadn't, that silence had its own cost. That invisibility was sometimes survival but never satisfaction. That the moment you finally speak, you can't control what happens next, but at least you've stopped controlling yourself into non-existence. Rebecca's phone lit up with a notification. Another message request. Another interview opportunity. Another person who wanted to turn her into a story. She ignored it and opened her photos instead. Scrolled back to pictures of her mother from before the diagnosis. Laughing at a family barbecue. Reading in the backyard. Hugging Rebecca at her undergraduate graduation. Her mother had always believed in her. Even now, when she couldn't always remember Rebecca's name, she remembered the feeling. The pride. The certainty that her daughter was capable of extraordinary things. Rebecca had spent 3 years thinking she'd failed that belief. Given up. Settled.
Disappeared.
But maybe she'd just been learning a different kind of strength. The kind that shows up every day to do hard, unglamorous work. The kind that survives by being small and then remembers how to be big when it matters. Maybe she hadn't failed. Maybe she'd just been waiting. Rebecca set her phone down and looked out the window at the dark street. Tomorrow she'd meet Dr. Morrison. Tomorrow she'd sign the fellowship papers. Tomorrow she'd start building the life she'd thought was gone forever. But tonight, she was just Rebecca McWhorter. Not a symbol. Not a viral moment. Not the woman who destroyed Harold Pena. Just someone who'd finally used her voice and discovered that people had been waiting to hear it all along. She went back to bed and slept better than she had in years. When morning came, Rebecca put on her nicest interview outfit, a dress she bought for academic conferences back when she still attended them. It fit differently now. A little looser in some places. A little tighter in others. But it still worked. She looked at herself in the mirror and practiced smiling. Not the customer service smile she'd perfected over 3 years of event coordination. Not the apologetic smile she used when asking people to do things they should have already done. Just her smile. The one her mother used to say could light up a room. "Okay," Rebecca said to her reflection. "Let's go be brilliant." She grabbed her keys, her phone, her purse, walked out the door of the house she'd thought she'd be trapped in forever, and drove toward a future she was finally ready to claim. The coffee shop was exactly the kind of place Rebecca would have spent hours in during graduate school. Mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, the smell of fresh espresso and old books. Music playing just loud enough to make conversation feel private without being intrusive. Dr. Morrison was already there, sitting by the window with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. She looked up when Rebecca entered and smiled. Not the polite professional smile. Something warmer. Something real. "I ordered you a latte," Dr. Morrison said as Rebecca sat down. "I hope that's all right. I can get you something else if—" "It's perfect," Rebecca said. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both holding their cups, both looking out the window at the morning traffic, the people hurrying to work, the city waking up. "I've been thinking," Dr. Morrison finally said, "about what you said in that ballroom. About how accent bias disguises itself as humor. About how mockery reinforces hierarchies while pretending to be harmless." Rebecca nodded, listening. "I've spent 30 years studying communication," Dr. Morrison continued. "I've written books. I've given keynotes. I've consulted for major organizations. And in all that time, I don't think I've ever seen someone demonstrate those principles as effectively as you did in 3 minutes." "I was just trying not to lose my job," Rebecca said quietly. "You were doing so much more than that," Dr. Morrison said. "You were teaching, right there in real time. You didn't insult Harold. Didn't attack him. You just explained what he was doing and why it mattered. And that's infinitely more powerful than any insult could have been." Rebecca looked down at her coffee. It didn't feel powerful in the moment. It felt terrifying. "The best teaching usually does," Dr. Morrison said, "because it requires you to be vulnerable, to speak when silence would be safer, to trust that someone's listening even when you can't guarantee they are." She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "The fellowship details. But before you look at that, I want to make sure we're clear about something." Rebecca met her eyes. "I'm not offering you this position because I feel sorry for you," Dr. Morrison said. "I'm not offering it because you went viral or because you're suddenly famous. I'm offering it because your research is exceptional, because your mind is exceptional, because the field needs voices like yours, not despite your accent, but inclusive of it. Because representation matters and expertise shouldn't sound like just one thing." Rebecca felt her eyes burning. She blinked rapidly, willing herself not to cry in a public coffee shop. "I started looking for you 2 years ago," Dr. Morrison continued. "Before any of this happened. I wanted you in my program because you're brilliant. What happened with Harold just made it public. But I've known it all along." Rebecca opened the folder with shaking hands. Scan the first page. The stipend amount made her breath catch. It was more than she'd made in the last 3 years combined. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's market rate for a fellowship position," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "And honestly, it's less than you deserve. But it's what I have to offer right now. There's room for growth. Publishing opportunities. Conference presentations. Eventually, when you're ready, teaching positions." Rebecca looked up. "Teaching? You're a natural," Dr. Morrison said. "You taught an entire ballroom full of people about accent bias in 3 minutes. Imagine what you could do with a full semester." The image settled in Rebecca's mind. Standing in front of a classroom. Not coordinating someone else's event. Not making someone else's vision happen. Teaching her own material. Sharing her own research. Using her voice, her actual voice, to shape how the next generation understood communication and power and credibility. "I don't know if I can," Rebecca said. "It's been so long since I—" "You can," Dr. Morrison interrupted gently. "You already have. You just need to remember that you're allowed to take up space. That your expertise is valid. That your voice matters exactly as it is." Rebecca sat with that for a long moment. Then she pulled a pen from her purse and signed the contract. Her signature looked different than it had 4 years ago. Less careful. More confident. Like she'd stopped apologizing for taking up space on the page. Dr. Morrison smiled and countersigned. "Welcome to the Morrison Institute, Dr. McWhorter." "I'm not a doctor yet," Rebecca said. "You will be," Dr. Morrison said with certainty. "And in the meantime, we'll work together to get you there." They spent the next hour discussing logistics. when Rebecca would start, what projects she'd work on first. Office space. Research resources. The possibility of returning to her original dissertation topic or choosing something new. I think I want to study something different, Rebecca said. Something about visibility and invisibility in professional spaces. About the people who shape systems without getting credit. About what happens when competence is dismissed because it doesn't look like what people expect. Dr. Morrison leaned back in her chair, eyes bright. That's a dissertation I would love to read. When they finally stood to leave, Dr. Morrison pulled Rebecca into a hug.
Quick, but genuine.
I'm proud of you, she said. Not for what happened with Harold. For having the courage to try again. Rebecca hugged her back, surprised by how much she needed to hear those words. Outside, the morning was warming up. The city was alive with possibility. Rebecca walked to her car slowly, letting herself feel everything. Relief,
Excitement. Fear. Hope.
all of it at once. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother's facility. Your mom is having breakfast and asking when you're coming. She says she has so much to tell you about her daughter, the professor. Rebecca smiled through tears. Her mother didn't have the timeline right. Didn't remember that Rebecca had left school. But emotionally, she had it exactly right. Rebecca typed back, "Tell her I'll be there in an hour. And tell her that her daughter is going to make her proud." As she drove toward the care facility, Rebecca thought about voices. About how they're shaped and heard and dismissed and celebrated. About how power determines who gets to speak and who has to stay quiet. She thought about Harold Pena, who'd built an empire on borrowed expertise and loud confidence. Who'd mistaken visibility for competence and volume for intelligence. Who'd assumed that the quiet people were quiet because they had nothing to say. She didn't hate him, didn't celebrate his downfall, just understood him now as a symptom of something larger. A system that rewards performance over substance, that values the appearance of expertise more than expertise itself. But she also thought about the young woman who'd approached her in the break room. The one who'd been hiding her accent, diminishing herself, trying to sound like what she thought success was supposed to sound like. That woman mattered more than Harold ever would. Because change didn't happen when powerful people fell. It happened when invisible people realized they'd been powerful all along. Rebecca pulled into the care facility parking lot and sat for a moment, letting the engine idle. She thought about her mother, about the years of care she'd provided, about the career she'd put on hold, about the invisibility she'd accepted as the price of survival. She'd spent so long thinking she'd lost her voice. But maybe she'd just been learning when to use it. Maybe silence wasn't always weakness. Maybe it was sometimes strategy. Maybe it was preservation. Maybe it was the thing you did while you gathered your strength. And maybe speaking wasn't just about volume. Maybe it was about precision. About knowing exactly what to say and when to say it, and how to make sure people couldn't ignore it. Rebecca McWhorter had been invisible for 3 years. But she'd never been gone. She'd just been waiting for the right moment. And when that moment came, when Harold Pena had mocked her voice and expected her to disappear, she'd done something he never anticipated. She'd spoken. Calmly.
Clearly. Precisely.
In an accent that had been dismissed as ignorant. In a voice that had been mistaken for weakness. In words that proved expertise doesn't sound like one thing. It sounds like whatever voice is speaking it. Rebecca turned off the car and walked toward the facility entrance. Her mother was waiting. Her future was waiting. Her voice, unchanged, unapologetic, finally heard, was waiting. And Rebecca McWhorter was ready. She pushed through the doors and into the bright lobby, where her mother sat in her favorite chair by the window, smiling at something only she could see. "Hi, Mom," Rebecca said, sitting beside her. Her mother turned, eyes lighting up. "Rebecca, my brilliant girl. Tell me, how's school?" Rebecca took her mother's hand. "It's good, Mom. Really good. I'm going back." "I always knew you would," her mother said, squeezing her fingers. "You were born to teach people. born to make them listen. Rebecca smiled, tears finally falling, but happy ones this time.
Yeah, Mom.
I think I was. They sat together in the morning light, mother and daughter, holding on to each other while the world rushed past outside. And Rebecca understood something she hadn't before. Her voice had never been the problem. The problem was a world that didn't know how to listen. But she'd just taught them. And she wasn't done teaching yet.